But thank you again for the opportunity to be with you and share the Dharma. I was reminded of a story of a particular monastery in which there was an abbess who had great gifts, and she became a legend in the local area where her monastery was located. That people believed she had great powers. And so a man from the village went to the abbess and asked her a question about what does he think his future will look like. And so the abbess looked at the man, and after being considerably quiet, she said, your future, your future, your future will be uncertain. That's how the story ends. But I thought, how do we as practitioners practice with uncertainty? And what brings us into this practice? Is it something that we are going to get right away, or how do we live with uncertainty? And there have been a number of books that have been written by a number of Buddhist scholars about practicing with uncertainty. And I have to confess, they usually are like recipe books. You know, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, and you get certainty. And do any of us really get any kind of certainty? But how do we as practitioners practice with the uncertainty of what we're living in right now, where disrespect is normalized, where murder is normalized, where hatred is normalized, where prejudice is normalized? How do we practice with all those elements? You know, again, it's something that I think we need to think of individually and also corporately as a Sangha. Just because life is uncertain, we know that, but how do we practice with it? What is our motivation, or is there a motivation? Is there a goal? I forget, there's one of the koans that says, not knowing is the most intimate. And we can romanticize not knowing and uncertainty, but what does that look like in our bones? How do we live? How do we practice? I believe and would like to believe that it's whatever the moment is, whatever the moment that presents itself. It's not about just offering hope to make things feel better. I don't think, at least I'd like to think, we don't come into this practice in order to feel better. Maybe we do. But it's not about feeling hope or to make things better. But how do we live? What does that look like in our lives outside of the Zendo? In the encounters that you will have after you leave and go on to what life calls you to, your next step. Roshi Joan Halifax would say our practice can be more radical, and then she places it within the emphasis of hope. To do what we can in the moment, that's being radical. And I would like to say that I think that's how we live and practice with uncertainty. When we encounter something in the moment, how do we respond? How do we make a difference? And it may mean making some things better, and it may mean not making things better. But how do we practice with this? And so I've been sitting with that for quite some time, and especially at this time in the life of our country. How do we practice with uncertainty? What can we give to each other at this time in our lives? Is there something we need? Again, I throw the question open to you because I don't have an answer. But I do feel that as practitioners at this time, it's something that we need to really strongly sit with and share with each other about how do we step into this time of uncertainty? How do we manifest the Dharma? So my talk is very short today, but I leave you with the question, and hopefully there is some discussion that around this topic of uncertainty. With that, let us talk together.